Good morning, everyone. My name is Christophe Hamelin. I'm the head of customer marketing for Alcatellucent Enterprise. And this morning, we're going to go through this quick webinar about taking a look at some of the communications and networking challenges posed by maintaining business continuity during some times of crisis. Before we start, I would like to thank everyone for joining and spending a bit of time with me today, and also to thank the FBC for organizing this webinar. So we've prepared a few slides to go through, and then we will go through a Q&A where we can take your questions. So maintaining business continuity during times of crisis, is of course a topic on everybody's mind at the moment. And we have been going through an unprecedented situation. It's affecting both our personal lives, but also disrupting the way that we work, some of our working habits, not only now, but probably making us think about new ways, new habits we need to take for the future to be better prepared for possibly the next potential event. And from an economic point of view, the key challenge for all the companies out there today is how can we continue to maintain some kind of continuity, to continue to trade, to support our customers when suddenly we've got to base everybody from home and to completely change the way that we operate. So addressing the new paradigm, it's about, like I said, maintaining the business continuity, and it's happening maybe at two different levels. First of all, maintaining the face of the company to the outside world, to maintain the trading, the customer support. So it's everything we can do from a customer service continuity point of view. And then internally, it's maintaining how we can continue to work with teams, the people who function in the company, and maintain all the operations and ensure that the company still goes. And two time frames really to look at this. First, responding to the urgency of the situation, and then having some thoughts maybe on the medium to long term. Once situation goes back to some kind of normality, going back to thinking about how did this affect us, and maybe having some more thoughts about preparing and learning the lessons for the next crisis. So from an urgent point of view, a number of choices have got to be made very quickly by CIOs, CTOs. The first one is about applications. What do we use as tools to enable our home workers? Not everybody has been already enabled. What devices do we use? Some companies don't have a laptop for every employee. That was not the policy. People were office-based, having a desktop computer. Suddenly they have to be at home. So what device do they use? There's of course the question of costs. There will be a financial impact of all of this. Budgets will be reduced. So people don't want to spend a huge amount of money, but that at the same time, we have to find a compromise to carry on operating. Of course, security is a big concern. Deployment as well, because you can't go to site and install some hardware, and everything's got to be done remotely and easily. Adoption as well, where it's got to be simple to understand, to make sure that people can start benefiting from the solution and be efficient at home very quickly without too much training. Sustainability, you don't want to spend some money on something that you will throw away at the end of the crisis. You're thinking about long-term investment, so getting something to get people going now, but that will keep on being useful for the future. And compliance is, of course, being in line with all the regulations. All the security aspects I mentioned quickly earlier. There's a tendency during the times of urgency to move to solutions that everybody knows, consumer type solutions like the WhatsApp, Facebook, but they do come with some drawbacks in terms of, first of all, their suitability for an enterprise, but also some of the security, the data privacy that is not along the same lines as enterprise grade solutions. And then once the situation goes back to some kind of normality, it will be the time to think also about how did this affect us? Did we have the right strategy? Do we need to rethink about what we put in the cloud, what we put on premise, having a better hybrid solution? Being able to respond in terms of disaster recovery to this type of situations. Have we dealt properly with on-site emergencies? If some people were identified being infected on site. How did we deal with the mass of information we had to provide to our customers in a short time? So all of these things we'll have to think about. So starting maybe with the urgent situation about enabling the home workers, the first thing we will say here is that actually not everybody needs the same thing. So there's different solutions for different user profiles. In most companies, some part of the population was already set up to work from home. I'm thinking typically of salespeople, marketing people, some project teams. So there is already some kind of people who were used to it to a certain point and who had some tools. However, what we see with this type of users is that now that we can't meet face-to-face people anymore, there is a growing demand for video communication, that's for sure. Then another type of profile that not many people talk about, but it's all the people who have got more complex needs. It's all the people who are the switchboard operators, people who are working in hunt groups, people behind contact centers. I mean, this is the face of companies. This is where all the main incoming calls and messaging are coming from. And so how do you handle this type of calls and this type of requests when you base the people from home? You can't just forward your switchboard to a mobile phone. It's not a very good solution. So, you have to think about what people use to handle a higher call volume and with more complex needs. And then for all the back office people who typically did not have a setup for home working, maybe we can subdivide them into two types. You have maybe the people with more simple needs in terms of communications and collaboration. So I'm thinking maybe of people from human resources, accounts, finance. And then you have all sorts of production people, IT, R&D, services people who maybe have some slightly simpler needs also in terms of communication. However, they do work with multiple equipment. They don't maybe have only one laptop. They have maybe several equipment that they need to plug in. And when they are at home, how do they handle all of that? So you have to think about this. And finally, across the board, of course, a massive need for collaboration and conferencing. So taking a look at a few specific use cases. So typically for people who are working from home, who have maybe simpler telephony needs, but who do need a lot of collaboration and some video presence, what do we need to look for? What are the general considerations to take into account? Well, first of all, as I mentioned before, because not everyone maybe has a laptop that's been sent to home, there's the question of going maybe for a cloud-based solution rather than a VPN type-based solution, because it's maybe easier to deploy. People can access it from their personal devices, their home computers, a smartphone, and they don't have to install any complex software. There's no issue with VPNs and installing company stuff onto the personal device. So typically you would want something that's available on multiple type of device, whether it's a computer or a smart tablet or smartphone. As I mentioned, quick and easy to deploy. No need for on-site visits. Again, you can't really travel much at the moment, so it's difficult to have to send engineers to people's homes to deploy stuff. You want easy adoption. In terms of functionality, what you're looking for, I guess, is the main thing that people are using today. So instant messaging, audio, video, conferencing, screen share, and file transfer. These are the main things that people need. Then, of course, you want something secure, enterprise grade, compliant with the different regulations in the different countries, especially around things like data privacy. And something that can work standalone, but if it can be connected to a telephone system and then even handle also the standard business line on top of doing the collaboration, that's even more of a bonus. So these are some of the things to think about when putting the employees at home. But then this is for people who have simple needs. For the people who have more complex needs, who are handling, like I mentioned before, the contact centers, hunt groups, all this kind of more complex telephony. Typically, what I've just mentioned is not enough. You need something that will give you all the flexible and the benefit of a voice over IP phone, but at home. So typically, this is where you'll be looking at soft phones connecting to your PBX back in the office. So for this, you do need a VPN, but they provide you exactly the same service as if you were sitting in your office. And it avoids the issues of dealing with call forwarding using a personal device, which means that people might have then to give their personal numbers, which are useful for now, but maybe in the future, it's not really something that they want to broadcast to businesses. Having to deal possibly with multiple voice mailboxes. If people start to use their own device and make business calls, maybe conference calls, they start to incur costs. They have to go through expenses, claiming all that back. So really having a soft phone connected to the company business solves all of these issues of the call routing, the complexities, the cost issues, because it addresses all of that in one hit. And again, you would want that soft phone to be quick and easy to deploy, but this will require a VPN. And then, yeah, you want something quick and easy to adopt, and again, secure, compliant, and so on. And then for the people who need to bring equipment at home, it could be an IP phone, by the way, a physical IP phone this time, not a soft one, but one that you plug at home, or if you have multiple computers, or if you have other IP type devices that you need to connect. Maybe you're doing some testing, some development, or you need for your job several devices. How do you handle that? Well, here typically a good solution is to install an extension of the VPN at home in the form of a Wi-Fi access point that will connect securely to your business on one end, and that will broadcast the VPN into the household, both from a Wi-Fi point of view, but also what you want to do is to look for an access point that has got some physical ports, some Ethernet ports, where you can also plug some devices, and you can even extend with a switch if you need more data ports at home. A lot of these access points nowadays, they have power over Ethernet, so you can even power directly some device that need power, so you don't need to plug them into the mains. So this is the best way, I would say, to handle this type of requirement. The other benefit of having a Wi-Fi kind of access point that manages this VPN connection plugged at home onto your internet connection is that for people who don't have the best bandwidth, and also even with the best bandwidth, what happens today is we're all working from home, we have partners, we have children, everybody's using the bandwidth at the same time. And there's a bit of conflict sometimes, the quality degrades. So the benefit of having a professional solution connected at home like this is that you can now manage the quality of service. You can prioritize certain types of traffic on the network. Of course, you can give priority to voice calls. You can also prioritize your business traffic versus some Netflix, some Amazon Prime, or some other sessions that the kids are doing. And you can try to manage the bandwidth you have at home in the best possible way. And again, it needs to be plug and play. Typically, you would want something that is not tying you to any vendor in particular, something that won't require big hardware, what we call a controller in the back end, and something that's centralized to manage and to deploy. So these are the type of things to look for. And then opening up the debate when things go back to some kind of normality, what you will probably want to do is to relook at everything you've deployed in urgency from a home working point of view, see if all that made sense, tweak it, maybe deploy it in a more process-driven kind of way, in a less of a panic mode, and to review that. But moreover, now you can start looking at other things that are maybe more difficult to do in an emergency situation, because these would probably need some site visits for installation of some hardware. You also want to see some demonstrations. So here it's maybe something that you could only do afterwards, but you can start thinking about it now. But here are a few ideas of things we see. First of all, how to deal with information. So probably in a time of a crisis, you get a lot of people asking the same thing in repetitive ways and at different times of day. Are you still open? Are you still trading? How can I do this? How can I get that? So what you probably want to look at is how to automate and provide repetitive information 24/7 and self-service information. And here you have a whole range of solutions, all the way from auto attendant that can be programmed and changed quite quickly with messaging to explain some basic information, all the way to interactive voice response, bots, artificial intelligence, to have very clever ways of dealing with queries. Another type of thing that people don't think so much about, maybe, but can happen, is how to deal with on-site emergencies. Did you have somebody on site who was infected or who had an issue? And did you have the right processes in place to warn people, to notify people of this, maybe avoid a particular area, coordinate a response with emergency services, record, audit trail all of this to look back at did you follow the right process? Was it handled correctly? Provide some location, some context to all of this information. So again, it's maybe something you want to look at. What happens if something takes place on site? Have you got the right way to deal with that? And finally, from an infrastructure point of view, and I did touch on it very quickly earlier, maybe relook at the overall disaster recovery strategy, the cloud strategy. Do I have the right balance of things in the cloud, easy to use for everyone, proprietary applications, VPNs, and so on? Is my infrastructure adapted? If something happened again, would I be able to relocate everyone at home and without losing too much efficiency? Have I got the right things? And of course, across the board, have I got the right security solutions in place to protect my business? So that's the opening, I would say, of the longer term reflection on lessons learned from this situation. Now, if you want, I will just spend a few minutes explaining then our view as Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise and some of the things we can do to help. So we are a key actor of digital transformation. We've been celebrating our 100-year history. So we've been used to a lot of changes over this 100 years, and we've been used to providing solutions to our customers to adapt to these different situations. So already since the beginning of this crisis, we've done a lot of things to assist not only businesses, but we're also active with governments, armies, hospitals, all the responses from the different governments in countries to deal with this and to provide tools to their staff, whether we're talking about nurses, doctors, some of the field hospitals that are being put up with the armies, and how governments continue to operate in these difficult times. So you won't be surprised to find out that we do have solutions that can address all the different challenges I've mentioned earlier in the introduction. The key thing is that they are simple to use, cost effective, they are secure, they are enterprise grade solutions, they are proven. It's not something we invented for this particular situation. It's stuff that has been working for years and years, and they can be deployed rapidly without site visits. So we've got, let's say, three main things that will answer the three main challenges I've just covered for the urgency, and then we have many other solutions that can help with what I've mentioned around information provisioning, around the emergencies on site, and so on. So maybe we can start having a very quick look at what they can do for you. So the first solution I will talk about very quickly is what we call the IP desktop phone. It is basically your business phone, but at home. It is physically on your computer or smartphone, but it is essentially your phone at home. So it's got the same features, the same multi-line access, hunt groups. It is your office phone, and this is the solution that we recommend for people who have high call volume, who are contact center agents, who are hunt group participants, who are switchboard operator up to a certain volume of calls, to handle all these more complex needs. For team working and video meetings, we have our solution called Rainbow. This is a solution whereby you get all the instant messaging, the audio, the video, conferencing, everything I've just mentioned earlier in the challenges to be addressed. It's quite easy to deploy. It's got a web version. It's got a thick client as well. It's available on smart devices as well as on a computer. So this is the solution that we would typically recommend to people who are in need of maintaining group working and collaboration. And at this time of crisis and difficulty, we are offering 3 months of free user licenses for people to try it out and to cope with the urgency, and then to review if this is something that they would like to keep on the longer term. Hopefully, they can be convinced of the utility of something like this in the longer term. And for deploying solutions at home, equipment, we have a range of Wi-Fi solutions. It's called Stella, and this is the way you can deploy fairly simply an access point at home. It is the termination point of your VPN, and it broadcasts it both on Wi-Fi and through wires into the home with some Ethernet ports to connect, be it your IP phone from home, from the office you bring back home, or other devices that you need. And again, here we have a special offer going to help in this time of crisis with 1 year management fees for the central web-based management tool. So just to wrap up, I hope that you found this with some interesting pointers and some of the things you have to think about when addressing this crisis situation. And we've looked at some of the things to do when you're considering enabling home workers with some cost-effective solutions, some secure, compliant solutions that can be deployed quickly, looking at things like how do you handle business communications, how do you look at team working, maintaining that internal functionality and operations in the company, and extended the secure office connectivity. And then maybe giving you some pointers, some ideas of some things to think about for the longer term, when situation comes back to normality, rethinking what have we learned from this experience, how have we handled it as a business, did we have the right tools, the right processes, should we tweak our network, should we tweak our disaster recovery approach, should we move more things to the cloud, or relook at the balance of all of this, and look at the provision of repetitive information. Do we automate enough? Do we provide, so if people are really not physically being able to take calls, do we have some kind of backup system where things are still being handled in some form of fashion? And do we deal with emergency situations on site if they happen, these kind of things? So these are the messages we just wanted to exchange with you this morning. I'm just displaying now here who are the key contacts in the region. If you want to further, the discussion, so the details are here, and maybe what we can do now is go through some Q&As. I see that there is already one question. If you let me have a look at it. So I have here a question from Xavier. Can an enterprise manage the remote AP, including configuration of bandwidth management? Yes, so this is a point, I guess, that I've covered on one of the slides. So typically for people who have bandwidth that is limited from their DSL provider, or for people who, like I said, maybe have a good connection, but suddenly we now have the whole family using it at the same time. How to manage that? But this is something that you can do by looking at the quality of service. This is how it's called, the definition of what types of traffic get priorities over other. So you can categorize everything and give priority to, of course, voice over IP is usually the one you give number one priority to, but then maybe some of your business applications and processes over things like gaming on the PlayStation or the Xbox and these kind of things, Netflix sessions. So that's the answer to that one. Thank you very much, Xavier, for asking. Let me see if there's any more questions. Not at the moment. One that I get asked regularly, and this is maybe why I will proactively answer it for you here, is what's the difference between things like Zoom, WebEx, and solutions like Rainbow I've just commented on. So I would say that the first difference is maybe a philosophical one. Solutions like WebEx and Zoom, they are solutions that are more video conferencing with some collaboration capability, whereas Rainbow, I've just spoken about, is more collaboration and communication solution with some video conferencing capability. So it's coming from two different angles. It's trying to address problems from two different angles. And of course, there's a kind of overlap in the middle, but they are there for slightly different needs. After that, I would say that from a Rainbow point of view, it's something, first of all, I believe it's the only solution of this type from a European vendor. It is designed with security by default. It is an enterprise grade solution. It is compliant with GDPR and a number of different regulations, and including a very stringent one around security of data. It's called HDS. It's the French authorities regulation for exchanging healthcare data. So it's extremely difficult to get. It's one of the hardest one in the world to get. So once you get that, you know that your solution is secure and it's allowed to exchange confidential data. And we managed to pass that. So really, I would say that this is a solution that is very secure to use for enterprise without worries. And it's again enterprise grade, so different from WhatsApp and maybe solutions like Facebook and so on as well. So it's a good compromise. The other thing with Rainbow is that it's available in different flavors. So you have, let's say, a standard GUI that I've shown you earlier, but everything is available as APIs. So to make it simple, it can be integrated into other applications. So as a business, you can in fact choose to merge some of these functionality with other software that you're using, have a unique software, and add the collaboration and communication part to it later. Okay, so I'm getting a few more questions here, so thank you very much. So I have just joined the meeting with some problem. Can we have the presentation? Yes, of course. So after this session, the presentation will be emailed to all of you, and you have here the contact details of the main people in the region. If you want to then further the discussion, have private conversation about maybe some specific points that concern your business. So that is absolutely no problem at all. You will get the slide, of course. And I believe this session is recorded as well, so you will be able to listen to it after the call. A question from Robert. What are the Rainbow features for telephony once connected to a telephony system via a media gateway? Yeah, thank you very much. So this is one of the differences as well. So between this and some other solutions, instead of having just a standalone solution, which creates, let's say, a second way to make phone calls and to handle collaboration. One of the benefits of Rainbow is that it can either be used on its own or connected back to one of our telephones, and we have connectors for a couple of some of our competitors as well. The benefit of doing that is that suddenly you now get complete routing and call control over your business line. So it's not a separate tool, it is completely integrated, and therefore you get things like the status of your colleagues. So exactly like you would have a busy lamp field and you could see who's on the phone, who's busy or not. You get that in the status also if people are making some phone calls from their business phone. And also you bridge the two worlds of, let's say, web type collaboration solutions and physical phones. So you can now establish easily a communication between somebody who's behind a standard desk phone in the office and somebody who is on a Rainbow. Not everybody needs to be therefore on their Rainbow client to communicate. You can actually handle different types of devices. So thank you very much. We have a full description of all the features you get by connecting the two. So thanks for asking the question. We can go into more detail on that if you're interested. Another question from Marwa. Do you think that the concept work from home will be popular after things go back to normal? Do you think we will see a surge in demand for services like my company is offering? So thank you very much for asking this question. Yes, I think it's not even just being popular. I think it's there's always been potential disaster in the world, whether we're talking about terrorist threats, whether we're talking about a virus like we are living here, maybe a natural disaster, a volcano eruption, whatever. So there are things that happen in the world, unfortunately, that can change things and change the way we operate. The one we are living now is very sudden. And I think a lot of people were not fully prepared for the extent of being in a lockdown and having to send everybody back home. So it's taken maybe a number of people by surprise, and it is absolute in the sense that no one can really go to the office. So suddenly even the back office people who were not really used to it, suddenly they are sent home. So what will happen, I guess, when things go back to normal, people won't forget about what just happened and say, oh, let's go back to being desk-based and we'll see what happens. I think, of course, we will not suddenly base everyone from home and that's the only thing we'll do, but we'll have to think about if this happens again, and it could happen again, not trying to be alarmist, but you know, there could be more waves of this and so on. So it's more a question of what happens in case of a disaster, and do I have the right tools, processes to then maybe send back people at home, this time hopefully not in panic mode like this has happened this time, but with processes in place, with the right tools. And you might find that anyway, some people who were not used to home working, back office people who were usually desk-based 100%, maybe now you start to because they'll have the tools now, maybe you can become more flexible and say, actually now maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week they can do this. I think it will affect definitely how we handle this type of things in the longer run. So thank you for that question. What are the costs of implementation for our solutions? Also during the crisis, I see that people are using Cisco and Zoom solutions. What are the plus we are offering to the business that give us, that give a competitive advantage? So the costs, they can be, I guess, a little bit different depending on what you're going for. But like I said, for Rainbow, we have currently a 3-month offer. So for the first 3 months, it costs nothing, and then it's a monthly recurrent fee per number of users that are using the solution. It is really not very expensive. It's a few euros per month per user, and then you have different options depending on some of the things you want. There's a full feature list and a few options to choose from. There's a little extra cost if you want to connect it to your PBX. So it varies in terms of options, but really we're not talking about solutions that are costing an arm and a leg. For the IP desktop soft phone, again, there's a small upfront cost because you need to buy the license for that. So I don't know, it's sub $100 or euros for that license. After that, you need to use an IP phone license. If you already have IP phones, I mean, the beauty of IP desktop solution is that because it is your IP phone, what you're actually buying is the software to use it onto a laptop or whatever. But after that, the user license on a telephone system, if you already have it, you don't need to buy it again. So that's all you need to purchase, then just the license for the soft phone. If you do not have enough user licenses, then you also need an IP license. So you're talking about an extra, a few $100s, but it's not really very much. And then for the remote access point, again, the one that I showed there, it's called the AP1201H. It's a small Wi-Fi access point with a few Ethernet points, power over Ethernet. We're talking about $100 for the device, and after that, there's a little bit of cost to set it up, but because there's no controller or heavy-duty equipment in the backend, it's not a huge cost. And like I've said to you, we do an offer at the amount of a 1-year free licenses for the management platform, so it's trying to make it attractive to people. So I guess that's the first part of the question answered. For the second part, around the competitive advantage versus things like Cisco, Zoom, I would like to say that first of all, I've kind of looked at the response from our competitors, and one thing I was surprised by, for example, Cisco, is that they base everything on WebEx and VPN. Zoom, they only offer video conferencing. I hope that, and I know it was a very quick webinar, we didn't go into too much detail, and it was fairly high level, but I hope you've seen, though, through the few slides I presented, that we have hopefully a wider approach. First of all, we don't try to say everyone is the same. Everybody just needs a Zoom client, or everybody just needs a Cisco WebEx client, and then you're fine. We recognize with our experience that there's different types of needs. You need to think about how to handle these type of things. I mean, how will you handle things like your switchboard with Zoom or WebEx, you know, or your contact center? So I think we are thinking a bit wider, first of all, and we're also thinking about the after, you know, crisis situation. So first of all, I would say the approach is a bit broader and a bit wider. And then in terms of actual solutions and features, like I've explained a little bit earlier, I think it's a different philosophy between WebEx and Zoom versus things like Rainbow. We coming more from the angle of collaboration, communication, the day-to-day features we use, and as a bonus to have video conferencing. And by the way, it's up to 50 participants in one conference for us on Rainbow, versus solutions that are maybe more made for video conferencing as a first solution, and then with a bit of add-on on the collaboration piece. So I think it's really different. And then I won't comment so much on the security aspects of our competitors, but from our point, like I said, we take it extremely seriously, and we've got the HDS certification and a number of other certifications. So I would argue that our solution is very secure. We have local data centers in many countries, meaning that everything is not just hosted on US data centers, and we go around some of the issues with that. We're very compliant. So I would say these are some of the advantages. So then we get some more questions. So from Xavier, what are the major potential innovations we foresee which will change the way we address such crises in the future? AI, ML, blockchains? Wow, okay, a bit of a wide questions. So I think on this one, well, we'll start with what's available today and what works, because that's definitely in the urgency. You don't have to invent new things. You need proven stuff that works, that can be deployed quickly, and that addresses the basic needs of people. But when things get back to some kind of normality, I'm sure, yes, that it will lead to more innovations and finding more long-term and better suited, you know, evolutions of what we do for specific needs. Definitely things like AI is something around automation, providing self-service that is already making some inroads into a number of businesses. And I think it will definitely develop more, because if no one is there to answer the phones in a time of emergency, maybe you want some automated system. And AI is used at many different levels. It can start from simple bots and automated scripted response all the way to some very complex thinking and automation. But I think you will definitely see more developments on that. Blockchain, yeah, I guess, but yeah, we are now talking about very specific topics that could have, I mean, for me, more than the technology, I would focus more on the benefit. What do we need to deliver? And then if blockchain is the right way to provide it, why not? But I would focus more on the benefit rather than individual technologies. So thank you for that. And I think we've answered this one as well. So now another question from Robert. What are the developments in the pipe to support the contact center with Rainbow? Oh, thank you, a very specific question. Okay, so in terms of contact center, what we also see is that there is a kind of blurred line nowadays between a formal contact center with typical contact center software, agents registering, and being available for handling the queries that they handle and so on. And let's say more informal type of experts who need to respond to queries through multimedia and so on and so forth. And we see the two kind of evolving in different directions, but with a lot of overlap. So we see that already Rainbow, as it is starting to be used as a mini contact center to answer maybe more informal type solutions right now, informal questions rather, sorry, and handling them through a multimedia fashion. But Rainbow today, to be a proper contact center solution, maybe lacks some of the features of call routing, typically queuing mechanisms, typically skill-based routing, all these kind of lovely things from contact center. So one of the things that is in the pipe of our company is to then, let's say, develop that intelligence, that routing intelligence, that call distribution or media distribution intelligence, queuing mechanisms, and so on, so that Rainbow can also, up to a certain point, when I say a certain point, or to a certain number of agents, be able to answer all this kind of, starting from more informal all the way to a certain formal breaking point. I mean, let's be honest, we're not going to replace maybe a full-blown Genesis contact center tomorrow with Rainbow, but not everybody needs a full-blown Genesis contact center. So the idea is to address all the simpler requirements, all the more informal things, and bridge the gap between these solutions by providing Rainbow with the features and functionality of routing calls, of queuing, and also the reporting that you would want from a more contact center oriented solution. So thank you very much, and that's planned for release by the end of this year, maybe early next year. Roadmaps might be slightly affected by what's going on right now, but this is definitely something that we have in the plan. Okay, so I guess that's the end of the questions at the moment. So thank you very, very much for this very good interaction. I hope you found this interesting. Hopefully by your questions, I judge yes. So you have here again the contact details of the people if you want to continue the conversations in the region. So I'll let you contact them directly. In the meantime, I wish you a very good rest of the day. Another big thank you to the FBC for organizing this session. And I speak to you soon. Thank you very much.